Wonderful. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Yes, my name is Andy Jones. I work for PIB Group as Group Internal Communications Manager. My background is in marketing and in communication, so I worked for a couple of global PR agencies before joining PIB Group in June 2023.
And I'm Debbie West. I'm with Audere Communications, and like Andy, I've got a background in communications and specifically in internal comms and employee engagement.
Wonderful. So,
we're going to talk about craft and connection. So Andy and I are going to tell you a story about a podcast, just like the introduction indicated. But what I wanted to get to right at the start was what's at the heart of this, and it's about craft and connection. So just to get a sense of who's dealing with the same challenges Andy and I are dealing with, can I get a show of hands in the room? If during 2024 you worked on crafting a strategic narrative that resonated with your employees, getting the CEO's message out to everybody in a way that they felt like they connected with that message, describing your organization's purpose in a way that took everybody with you into that purpose, put your hand up if you worked on it. Okay, that's quite a response. And has anyone got that in their to-do list for 2025? Yes, it's a perennial thing, and we know that it's so important at the moment for people in the workplace to feel that they have that sense of connection with their employer, with their company, with that organization's purpose and where it's going. So that's really what's at the heart of what Andy and I are talking about today.
So let me introduce you to PIB Group, because you may have not heard about us before. We are an insurance intermediary focusing on specialist solutions, which basically means if you've got a camper van or if you've got a £50 million yacht, we can provide insurance for you. PIB is backed by private equity, so it's been on a colossal rise throughout the years. It's entering its 10th year this year. So when I joined, there was around 3,500 people across the UK, Ireland, Europe and India. And by the time we get to the end of 2024, we're actually way past 4,000. But I don't know what publicly we say, so let's just pretend that's the correct number. We had around 85 to 90 acquisitions, but now we're well over 100, and we're in 8 markets. We're now in 10. As of this week, it will be 11. And to meet that rising group of employees, the comms team has doubled in size. And if anybody wants to know, this is what we call a mousey. So it's a selfie where you take it from the floor facing up. It was Joe Wilkinson came up with it, and I'm obsessed with them.
So this was a really interesting time for Andy and his team, and we were really pleased to be brought in at this time because obviously there was so much going on at PIB. It's this rapidly growing organisation. There are lots of different people in clusters of cultures joining in this one organisation and wondering, where they are, where they've landed, how do they fit in, and how do they kind of join in with this trajectory. And Andy at this point thought, well, maybe I should think about a podcast, and we're really glad that he did, because it's a really ideal opportunity and real fertile territory for something like a podcast to take hold. So why? What is it about audio and podcasts that would really help Andy in this situation? And that's all about the power of podcasting. So we all know that podcasting is rising in popularity externally and particularly among younger generations, and all of those facts, we've all heard those facts. But there's lots more going on underneath that that's more subtle and really speaks to what the power of this type of content is. And we get this insight not only from our own experience, but from a plethora of data that's available in the marketplace now suddenly about why people are choosing podcasts and why they really connect with them. So these are the key factors. What tends to happen when you're making a podcast is for the people who are speaking, they've got more time to open up. They've got more time to be themselves. They've got more time to go into depth and explain the context around their ideas. They tend to be dialogic content, so they're having a conversation, which is a much more natural way for people to communicate. It doesn't feel so forced. It's much more normal to listen to that type of interaction. And it's a great space for storytelling. And we've had so many conversations this morning about the power of story and how important story can be for really connecting with people and helping difficult messaging, complex messaging to resonate for people where they are. So for a speaker, it's much easier to be authentic. You're in a much more sort of authentic environment. And for a listener, you can judge that authenticity from what you're hearing. So you're hearing tone of voice. You're hearing people's actual syntax. They're the words they would say in the way they would say them. So you've got much more of a sense of whether or not that content is authentic and whether you trust it. So it's a great type of content to build that sense of trust. For the listener, like the chap in our picture, people tend to listen to a podcast when they're alone, and it's a kind of pull communication. They tend to download that podcast or tune into that podcast at a time that suits them and in a place that suits them. So accessing that content becomes part of their personal experience. It's not something they've got to do at a desk or looking at a screen or at a certain time o'clock. They can do it when they want to do it, so it becomes part of their journey. And in that way, it becomes individualized to them. And because they're listening alone, they've got that sense of one-to-one connection. And we know that all of those factors combine to give us greater what's called duration engagement, which means that you'll listen to a podcast for longer than you'll tend to read a blog or other form of communication. And as I'm sure you know, as communications professionals, attention is so critical in terms of getting the right content to the right people and in a way that they feel like they can really connect with and engage with, and they want to actually tune into it. So all of those factors meant that this was going to be a really powerful channel for Andy. So Andy, give us a little bit more information about your actual vision for the podcast itself.
Yeah, so for PIB Group, we've obviously got over 4,000 colleagues, and they're all in different states of maturity. So in the UK, we feel a lot more connected to the group because the acquisitions are older, they've had more time to adapt. But Romania and France were purchased last year, so they're still early in their journey of feeling part of PIB Group. So the vision for us really was to bring our two top leaders, Brendan and Ryan, as shown in this illustration here, together because they've got a fantastic dynamic. They share an office with one another and will bicker all day. They will chat to each other all day. Sorry, I didn't say bigger. So they will chat and challenge each other on the best direction for PIB Group to go. So if we could somehow bottle that conversation and share it with all of our colleagues, we'd have something really powerful to share with them. So we really wanted to create a podcast where you felt like you were getting a VIP experience by sitting next to them. Now this illustration suggests we recorded it at the Ivy. That is still on the vision board. We actually recorded it in a shared meeting room in our office building, but one day we will get there.
We will, yeah, absolutely. And it was really great to have that real clear vision and that aim. It would have been great to be in the Ivy, don't get me wrong, but yeah, we'll get there. And to have those two great personalities in the form of Brendan and Ryan to actually record that content with. And I think for a lot of people, once you've got that vision and you've got that energy and you know who's on the podcast, the next thing to do is buy the kit and press record, right? Because that's where everybody wants to get to next, and what microphone do I buy and all of that. But there are actually lots of different ingredients that go into the planning process ahead of time that are really critical to the success of it, because like any campaign, you've got to really think about the detail and think about how it's going to reach people and how it's going to connect with people and how they're going to recognize it. And so for all of those reasons, Andy and I did a lot of planning behind the scenes. And some of the things I think you found really interesting, Andy, that slide that looks a little bit serious at the bottom is the structure options. And we really talked about when you think about a podcast, if you're a podcast listener, the podcast that you listen to will be playing in your head, and that's what you assume a podcast is like. But actually, there's a whole range of creative options that you can adopt when you're making a podcast. And those little blocks of colour on the structure options are things like music or pre-recorded elements or dialogic elements or jingles or an advert or something that says, get this off your intranet. So you know from your people and what they like to engage with, how long their attention will be with that podcast, the kinds of elements they'd want to be built into it, the sort of thing that plays in their head when you use the word podcast. So think creatively about how you can structure that experience for them so it's the most engaging it can be for them.
And while Debbie was teaching me about structure of podcasts, I had to think about how we package it all together and present it to our people. So what's the name? What does the thumbnail look like? What's the music? What's the campaign that surrounds it? So we spent a lot of time thinking about how we bring all those together. And I wanted to go a bit crazy and different with it because I thought this is a brand new channel, let's make it cool, let's make it edgy, but actually didn't fit in with the rest of our channel mix. So a lot of people told me to rein it in a little bit and make it feel like it sits as part of the family of comms that we have. And the second hardest thing to do about this podcast for me was pick some music. And I think I infuriated Debbie the most during this process because I couldn't find the right language to say what I wanted from the music. So we went through a number of different genres, EDM, jazz, a bit of classical at one point, until we sort of found the right one that felt like it was upbeat and positive, which I wanted, but also felt PIB, which was the genre of happy pop. So yeah, that was nice. And then I just ran that past my team because they've got fresh eyes and ears. So while I sort of did a lot of work with Debbie, ran it past my team just to make sure I was hitting the mark.
Great. This was the hard part, though, Andy, wasn't it?
This was the hardest part, picking the topics to go with. So we recorded 3 episodes in bulk together, and I had pretty much free rein to decide what those topics were. So I had a number of different ideas. You know, it could be a million different things, right? But I felt like the smartest thing to do for our people, for our colleagues who were joining all the time, whether through the growth of the business or acquisition, was to set a strong foundation for everyone so that these could live on in the future. I was really lucky because Brendan and Ryan are very happy to be directed, so I was able to draft up these ideas and then send them to them, and they just did it, which was fantastic. So the 3 episodes we went with, I really wanted to demystify what PIB Group is, what its past is, and what its future entails. So for the first episode, we did what do group CEOs actually do? Because a lot of people may not have even met Brendan or Ryan, let alone know what they do. So it was a nice frank discussion about what they actually bring to the business. We included the question, is Brendan ever going to retire? Because he hates answering that question, but thankfully we got it down on record in a jovial way, which he can point to in case anybody asks him in the future. And this actually acted as a bit of a history lesson because both reminisced about how far they've come in the past sort of 10 years. And then in the second episode, I wanted to look to the future. So PIB Group talks about itself internally in chapters. We're currently in chapter 3. So I posed the question, what does chapter 10 look like? And a lot of it was sort of gazing into a crystal ball because they don't know, it's very far down the line. But it did help set the tone and direction of the business and give people an idea of where we're heading. And then for episode 3, I really wanted to sort of bridge the two, the past and the future. I keep saying the word acquisition. I keep saying it a lot at work. We are a very acquisitive business. So I really wanted to shine a spotlight on what that process looks like. Why do we choose certain companies and how it all happens and comes together. So I sent what you see on screen plus a couple of extra emergency bullet points for each episode to Brendan and Ryan 6 days before recording. Both read the email, one of them prepared and one of them did not. It will be career limiting to say which is which, so I won't.
Yeah, you'll get a glimpse of, and you can make your own decision about which did and which didn't when we get there. But yeah, and then we got into the actual first stage of recording, and for the first session where we recorded those first 3 episodes, we did that in a room together, and we were really delighted to get the opportunity to come into the room and do that. That in-person dynamic was brilliant. It was a great way to start, and also the symmetry of the room gave us that kind of Wes Anderson look and feel, which we thought was really good. But that warmth and the kind of real genuine humour and relationship between those 2 people was so evident because we had them together in the room. So it really did add to that dynamic, and it gave us a really strong start. And the reason we've put that sort of behind-the-scenes picture up there for you is to show you. You just see the 2 people on the microphones, on the podcast, but actually there's so much going on behind the scenes. And there would have been somebody taking the photograph as well as all of us. We all had a role to play there in that room, and it was real good teamwork, Andy, wasn't it? And we did have that sense of having that VIP access, so it was easy for us to convey that sense that you said you wanted in the vision of being a VIP in the room, listening into that kind of senior level conversation. So.
Yeah, and it was great to be in the room to record together because it's quite easy to record virtually because obviously different calendars dictate where they are and when they're free. But actually bringing them into the room meant that they could sort of forget they were being recorded. Again, one of them is very good at being on video and one of them is not. So it was really nice to find a way for them both just to focus on each other. They were sat opposite each other and could just look at each other and talk to each other. And then for me personally, it was great to have Audere in the room because I didn't have to worry about the tech setup, the production, all the technical aspects. All I had to focus on was the talent and keeping Brendan and Ryan happy, keeping their glasses full of water, and then just making sure they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, and whilst they were very confident leaders with different styles, and I think their different styles come over really nicely, actually, in the content, not everyone is as confident as these, and it's a good thing to be prepared when you go into any situation with somebody who's going to be on your content, your podcast, whatever, to be ready to help them to transition into that sitting down, talking, being recorded. Not everybody enjoys that experience, but if you're on the front foot with that, you can help to sort of bring them out and relax them into that environment. It really, really does help. Yeah.
And when it came to editing, again, it was great to have Audere because they could worry about the heater in the background that was turning on and off every 5 minutes, and I didn't need to worry about that. When they delivered it, it had magically disappeared somehow. But actually a challenge I did have when it came to the editing was going through the transcripts and deciding whether we needed to cut anything. And actually in the first episode, there was something I would say was a little bit spicy, and I didn't know whether we wanted to keep it or not. And so what I did, like any good comms professional, is I sat on the fence and presented the choice back to them. But to their credit, they said, no, we said it in the room, we stand by it, put it in the episode, which was really nice for us because then we didn't have to worry too much about censoring for episodes 2 or 3. We knew where we stood.
Absolutely. So that's what the view was and the recorded output was for our trailer, and we're going to give you a little sense of that.
So, Ryan, for the first podcast, the question that we've been asked, I think rather cheekily, is what do CEOs do? But I thought it might be interesting for people to understand where we both came from before we started working together.
I was on paper CFO, and you said, right, work us out a governance structure and how we're going to deal with our investors and our board. And so at that point in time, we were just doing literally everything and anything that came to mind.
So one of the things that irritates me is as I've got older, because I'm 65 this year, people, one of the questions we've been asked to talk about is Brendan going to retire? So what do you think?
So whenever I get asked
that, I should?
I say he's never going to retire.
The guy that fired me back in 2011 from Willis, he was 70 at the time, and he used to be irritated the same way as I am now, that people were always asking, when are you going to retire, when are you going to retire? And he always pointed to his heart, and he used to say, when the passion leaves that. And I sort of believe that myself, that while ever I've got a passion for this business, I'm going to stay in it. So do you think we've answered the question, what do CEOs do, and in particular, what does Ryan do? I've been trying to work out what you do.
Well, I hope so. Well, we'll find out. But people will comment back, or they'll still be asking us.
So, we produced 3 30-minute podcast episodes with each having a 2-minute video trailer. And we ran a campaign promoting it left, right and centre as we released each episode monthly. And we also had a competition run alongside to win some AirPods. People really want to win AirPods, is what I've learned from that. So we're probably going to repeat that competition this year. On average, the episodes got 3.5 times more plays than our other audio-only stories, as well as getting double the likes, despite being 3 times as long. But the best feedback for us really was that these comments that you can see on screen actually came from across the business. So it wasn't just the UK and Ireland who are a bit closer to our group and who are English speaking first, native English speaking. It was from across the business. So India, Spain, Poland, they were all getting involved and saying how much they enjoyed it. And actually this top left comment came from someone quite senior in the business. He's been here at least 5 years and has said, actually, I learned something from listening to this. When I work with you every day, I should probably know some of this, but I still got to learn something. So that was amazing for us.
Yeah, we're really delighted with the impact and the outcomes that the podcast has given Andy effectively and his team. And a lot of the comments that we've seen indicate that people really were connecting with that content. And as Andy mentioned, they were staying with it for longer. They were finding out more about their own organisation, from that very senior level. And it's given us a great start and a great platform to take that podcast a little bit broader and to keep working with it. So what does the future hold, Andy?
Yeah, so we got some positive reactions, which is great. So we've continued to produce more episodes, albeit not as consistently in 2024 as I would have liked. But going into 2025, we're planning a load more, along with bringing in new speakers to the podcast to bring in more diverse voices. I'm hoping to take it out into Europe very soon, to be able to get our European leaders involved, as well as different content and topic specialists, so that we can bring a wide range of insights to everyone. And it's been fantastic fun to launch a podcast. So it is a lot of work to begin with, but actually it's really rewarding, and it's been great to be asked when the next episode is going to come out.
Yeah, exactly. You've got a ready audience. Yeah, perfect. No, it was really good fun. Yeah, thanks, Andy. So that's it from us and our story. Over to you. Any questions?
I know we're going to have quite a lot of questions on this, but actually we're running a little bit behind, but I am going to let 2 quick questions come through. We can make it snap.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm from Cancer Research UK. I guess I want to take you kind of back to the start. How did you know a podcast was the right thing for you to be pursuing from a kind of strategic perspective? How did it fit into your wider strategic objectives as an internal comms function? Yeah, so we just launched a brand new intranet, which was more global than the last one and a lot prettier. But we were producing a lot of written content and a lot of short form video content, but we weren't being able to, we were very nervous about the time that people would invest in those videos. And so we wanted something where we could go a bit deeper into a topic. And so I don't know the percentage, but maybe like a third of our workforce is on the phones in a call centre. So we both knew they weren't able to get the time to watch a longer video. So that's why we thought a podcast might be a better way to go. We also, as you saw, like Brendan and Ryan have a great dynamic, and actually if we could just get them in I was about to say in people's ears, but like just like that VIP experience, they'd want to listen and they'd want to find out more, because we're asking for 30 minutes of people's time, either in their commute or their lunch. So that's the reason we trialled it. And actually these three were like a bit of a tester for us to see how they would go.
I saw another. Yeah, here we go.
Hi, I'm David from Travelport. Just on that idea of when people listen to them, I think everyone says it, podcasts, it's kind of a medium everyone uses, so everyone's be used to it. Yeah, but they listen to stuff they like, right? Stuff that they're interested in. So they'll commute from 8 to 9, 5 to 6, whatever, on their way home. When do they listen to your podcasts?
Do you know, Andy, the time of day?
No.
Okay.
So SoundCloud Pro costs £100, and I'm so close to the end of my free limit that I'm about to pay for it. But no, from conversations, it does seem the commute, and I do think 30 minutes is actually a little bit too long, so we will be trialling 20-minute episodes to try and encourage some more listenership.
Yeah, and we know just from industry stats that a lot of people who listen to podcasts do so because not just they want to be entertained, but they want to broaden their horizons, they want to learn. A lot of people see podcast content as relatively educational, but in a nice, entertaining way. So for people who are trying to improve their career prospects, you know, that sort of thing, it's a good channel for that line of thought, effectively. So.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Round of applause, please, for
Thank you.
Debbie and Andy.